Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
What's the one thing a narcissist can't survive without? Why does ignoring them hurt more than confronting them? And what if silence is the most powerful weapon you never knew you had? There's one thing a narcissist craves more than anything else: attention. It's their fuel, their oxygen, their lifeline. Without it, they don't just feel uncomfortable, they begin to unravel. See, a narcissist doesn't care whether the attention they receive is positive or negative. Compliment them? They feel powerful. Argue with them? They still feel powerful. As long as you're engaging with them, as long as they're taking up space in your mind, they're winning. That's why the most powerful way to deal with a narcissist isn't to fight back. It's not to call them out in a dramatic confrontation. The most effective way to torture a narcissist is to starve them, cut off their supply, deny them the emotional fuel they thrive on, and watch what happens. Imagine a performer standing under the spotlight, basking in the applause, feeding off every cheer, every laugh, every gasp. That crowd is their validation. Now, picture that same audience slowly rising and walking out. No boos, no claps, just silence. That's what happens to a narcissist when you stop reacting. When you refuse to feed them, it's not just frustrating, it's devastating. But here's the catch: they know this, and they'll do anything to pull you back in. They know exactly how to provoke a reaction. Maybe it's a subtle jab disguised as a compliment. Maybe it's something they know you're sensitive about. Or maybe they go the opposite route, suddenly becoming overwhelmingly charming, showering you with praise and affection, pretending they've changed. And if that doesn't work, they might go full attack mode, accusing you of ridiculous things, twisting your words, rewriting the past, and pushing every emotional button you have. Because the second you respond, the moment you argue, explain yourself, or try to defend your truth, you've lost. You've handed them exactly what they were after: your attention. So how do you truly take away their power? How do you torture a narcissist without saying a single word? With silence, emotional neutrality, indifference. That's what truly breaks a narcissist. They would honestly prefer that you scream at them, lash out, or even cry, because that still means they matter. Your reaction validates their power. But when you stop reacting, when you treat them like background noise, like a passing inconvenience that no longer holds weight in your world, they begin to unravel. Their entire identity revolves around being significant, being noticed, controlling how others think and feel. So when you take that away, when you strip them of the one thing they depend on most, they're left alone with the one thing they've always avoided: themselves. And that's the one reality they can't handle. At first, they might pretend not to care. You'll hear them scoff, say something sarcastic: "Oh, the silent treatment? Goo." But don't be fooled. On the inside, it's eating them alive. That silence you've given them, it's deafening to someone who thrives on attention. So they escalate. They push harder. They'll pick fights, make cutting remarks, or bait you into reacting. If that doesn't work, they might flip the script, becoming the victim. They'll say things like, "You've changed," or "You don't care about me anymore." That's when you know it's working. But here's the challenge: consistency. You have to hold the line. It's not enough to go silent for a day and then respond when they do something outrageous. That's exactly what they want. They're testing you, probing for weakness, waiting to see if they still have access to your emotions. The moment you cave, even once, they'll take it as confirmation that they still hold power over you. But if you remain firm, if you stay steady no matter how dramatic or manipulative they become, something begins to shift. Over time, they'll realize that their words, their tricks, their presence no longer affect you. And when that happens, when they see they can no longer extract attention, they'll be forced to do the one thing they dread most: find a new source of supply. That's when you win. A narcissist's entire world is built on illusion, carefully constructed, meticulously maintained. They craft a persona, a performance, meant to control the narrative, to make others believe in the image they've designed. But what happens when no one's watching? See, narcissists are master storytellers. but not the inspiring kind. They spin grand tales about their greatness, their suffering, their superiority. And for a while it works. People believe them. They're drawn in by the charisma, the confidence, and those carefully timed sob stories that make you feel guilty for doubting them. They make you feel like you owe them something. That's the trick. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Deep down, narcissists are painfully aware that it's all a lie. They know that if people ever saw past the surface, if anyone really understood who they were behind the charm and the mask, it would all fall apart. That's why exposure is so powerful. It's not about public shame. It's about pulling the curtain back. Because when you expose their truth, you unravel their illusion. And that's one of the most effective ways to bring a narcissist to their knees. You see, narcissists don't just lie to the world. They lie to themselves. They rewrite their own past, molding it to fit whatever version of the story serves them best in the moment. One day, they're the hero, the savior who rescued everyone. The next, they're the victim, constantly misunderstood, unfairly attacked, just trying to do the right thing. But regardless of the role they play, the end game is always the same. Control. Control over how people perceive them. Control over how they perceive themselves. And, most dangerously, control over you. Because if they can control the narrative, they can control the outcome. If they can control the truth, they can control everything. But that control begins to crack the moment you expose the inconsistencies. The moment you calmly point out what doesn't add up. At first, they'll try to laugh it off. You misunderstood me, they might say, or that's not what I meant. They'll twist your words, flip the blame, accuse you of making things up. But if you remain calm, steady, and clear, if you refuse to back down or second-guess yourself, you'll start to notice something shift. Watch closely. Look past the words. You might catch it, a brief flicker of panic in their eyes, a flash of anger that breaks through their composed facade. The mask slips, even if just for a moment. They may try to compose themselves quickly, but deep down, they know. In that split second, they realize you see them clearly. And for a narcissist, there's nothing more terrifying than being truly seen. When someone pierces through their carefully crafted image and spots the truth underneath, it shatters their illusion of control. But don't expect a confession. Don't expect them to say, "You're right," or "You caught me." That's not how a narcissist operates. Instead, they'll scramble to regain control. They'll deflect. They'll gaslight. They'll twist your words and question your memory, all in an attempt to make you doubt what you know is real. And if that doesn't work, they may go on the offensive. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're the liar. You're the manipulator. All of it is a desperate attempt to protect the illusion they've spent so long maintaining. But here's the powerful truth. You don't need to convince them. You don't need to argue, defend, or explain yourself again and again. Because the real power doesn't come from forcing them to admit the truth. It comes from knowing the truth for yourself. When you stop second-guessing, when you stop engaging in the back-and-forth mind games, when you root yourself firmly in reality and stop playing by their rules, that's when they lose their grip. They can only control you if they can distort your perception of the truth. But once you see clearly, once you step outside their illusion, something shifts permanently. You can't unsee what you've seen, and neither can they. At the core of a narcissist's thrill is control. Control over your thoughts, your emotions, your responses. They test boundaries constantly, pushing, pulling, manipulating. It starts subtly. A little jab disguised as humor. A guilt trip masked as concern. Comments like, "I'm just trying to help," or "I know what's best for you," or "Why are you being so sensitive?" And slowly, almost without realizing it, you begin adjusting. Your words, your actions, even your thoughts, just to avoid triggering them. Just to keep the peace. Just to survive the next storm. And that's exactly where they want you. Compliant, cautious, and contained. Molded into something manageable. Held tightly under their control. But there's one thing that disrupts that control more powerfully than anything else. Boundaries. A clear, firm, non-negotiable boundary is like a wall they can't scale, a lock they can't pick. It sends a message that speaks louder than any confrontation. This is where I end. and you do not get to cross. And nothing infuriates a narcissist more than realizing they no longer have unrestricted access to you. But don't be fooled. Setting a boundary won't go unchallenged. The moment you draw that line, they'll test it. They'll push, prod, and probe, looking for a crack. They'll test that boundary over and over again, quietly, subtly, waiting for the smallest sign of weakness. They're incredibly patient when it comes to manipulation. Maybe they bring up a topic you've clearly asked them not to mention. Maybe they drop by unannounced under the excuse of checking in. Or maybe they casually dismiss your boundary with a smug comment like, "You didn't really mean that, did you?" And that's where most people slip. They laugh it off. They let it go just this once to keep things calm, to avoid tension. But that's exactly what a narcissist is hoping for. They're always watching, always keeping score. The moment you soften, even a little, they see it not as grace, but as permission. They don't hear just this once. What they hear is, "I can get away with this." That's why consistency is everything. The key to setting boundaries with a narcissist isn't just about being clear. It's about being unshakably firm. No drawn-out explanations. No back-and-forth debates. No justifying your choices in hopes they'll understand. Just a direct statement, followed by unwavering action. "I'm not going to talk about that. I won't allow you to speak to me that way. If you cross this line, I will leave." And then you follow through. Every single time. No exceptions. Because a boundary without consequences is just a suggestion. And narcissists don't respect suggestions. They look for ways to bend them. But when they realize they can't manipulate you into shifting that line, that's when the real show begins. At first, they'll escalate. They'll try to guilt trip you, throwing out lines like, "I can't believe you're treating me like this after everything I've done for you." Then they'll try to provoke you, to push your buttons until you explode. Because to them, even anger is a win. Any reaction is better than no reaction at all. And if that fails, they'll flip the script. They'll play the victim. "I guess I'm just a terrible person. I guess you don't love me anymore." It's all one big performance. Another manipulative attempt to wear you down, to make you second-guess yourself, to make you feel bad enough to cave in. But if you stand firm, if you hold that boundary like your peace depends on it, because it does, everything begins to change. If you hold your ground, if you refuse to budge no matter how many angles they try, something powerful begins to happen. They start to lose control. And when a narcissist loses control over you, they lose interest. Why? Because without control, they have nothing left to stand on. A narcissist's entire existence revolves around control, not just of situations, but of people. They don't want simple cooperation. They crave domination. They want emotional access. They need to know they can get inside your head, steer your reactions, shape your feelings. It's never about understanding. It's never about truth. It's always about power. And the quickest, easiest way to give them that power? React. Get angry. Defend yourself. Try to prove them wrong. It doesn't matter how you react, only that you do. Because the moment you respond, the moment you engage, you're playing by their rules. They'll push your buttons on purpose. They'll say things they know will sting. Maybe it's a veiled insult hidden in a compliment. "Wow, you actually look good today." Maybe it's a subtle jab, cloaked as humor. Something that touches an insecurity you've tried to hide. Or maybe it's a blatant, outrageous lie. So absurd, so inflammatory, that you feel compelled to respond. That's the trap. And they know exactly how to spring it. Because the moment you take the bait, they've succeeded. They've pulled you back into their reality. A place where logic doesn't apply. Where emotional manipulation is the only language spoken. And where they always set the rules. But there's one thing they absolutely cannot tolerate. Indifference. Nothing tortures a narcissist more than realizing they no longer have power over your emotions. When you don't flinch. When you don't fire back. When you don't let the rage, the hurt, or the frustration rise up, they're left with nothing to feed off of. Just quiet, unmoved neutrality. When you refuse to react, when you stand calmly in your truth and say nothing, it sends a clear message. You have no power here. And that drives them absolutely mad. At first, they won't believe it. They'll test the boundaries again. They'll up the intensity. Try bigger tactics, louder words, deeper cuts, because surely, there must be a way to break through. So what happens when provoking you doesn't work? They turn to guilt. And if guilt fails, they pivot again, playing the victim, trying to make you feel like the bad guy for staying silent. And if that doesn't get a reaction, then comes the love bombing. Out of nowhere, you're flooded with compliments, affection, fake warmth, all designed to hook you emotionally, to pull you back in just long enough for them to reclaim the control they lost. But if you stay grounded, if you keep that steady, calm, detached energy, no matter how they switch tactics, something begins to change. Slowly but surely, they realize it. You're no longer under their influence. They can't reach you the way they used to. And that's when the frustration sets in. That's when their grip begins to slip and they start making mistakes. Because a narcissist without control is like a magician whose secrets have been exposed. Suddenly, they're not so powerful anymore, and deep down, they know it. The illusion fades. The performance loses its charm. And once they see, truly see, that nothing they say or do can shake you, that's when their interest starts to fade too. Because without your reactions, without your energy to feed on, they're left with nothing. And there's nothing more agonizing to a narcissist than witnessing you thrive without them. That's their greatest fear, watching you grow, succeed, and glow in your peace while they fade into the background. In their mind, they were always the star of your story, the main character, the one who shaped your path. They need to believe that without them, you'd stumble, that eventually you'd come crawling back. They build their self-worth around that fantasy, that you can't outgrow them, can't live fully without their influence. But the moment they realize that you're not just surviving, you're flourishing, that's when the real pain begins. That's when the reality hits. At first, they won't believe it. They'll try to convince themselves it's just a show. They're faking it, they'll think. They're only pretending to be happy to get a reaction out of me. They'll tell themselves you're acting, that your peace is just for show, that eventually you'll break. Eventually, they expect it to fall apart. They watch from a distance, waiting, hoping for that one moment of weakness. The moment you stumble, the moment they can swoop back in and convince themselves that you still need them. But something happens when you don't look back. The longer you move forward without checking behind you, the more the truth begins to set in for them. You weren't pretending. You weren't bluffing. You've actually moved on. And that's when panic begins to creep in. They might start small, testing the waters with a vague, friendly message. Something harmless on the surface. Hey, hope you're doing well. Maybe they'll bring up an old memory, trying to tug on your heartstrings, hoping nostalgia will reopen the door. And if that doesn't work, they'll switch tactics entirely. They might stir up drama, spread rumors, create chaos, anything to provoke a reaction. Because in their world, any engagement, even negative, is proof they still matter. But the moment you don't respond, the moment your silence speaks louder than any comeback, they feel it. A wound they'll never admit to, but one they absolutely feel. Here's the truth. Narcissists don't just crave control over your past. They want control over your future. They want to believe that even when they're not around, their shadow still lingers. That every decision you make somehow still factors them in. That when you laugh, succeed, or feel joy, there's still a part of you wondering what they would think. But when that influence disappears, when your peace, your joy, your success has nothing to do with them, that's when the realization hits. That's when they know, deep down, they've lost you for good. And the most powerful part? You don't have to do anything grand to prove it. No dramatic announcements. No social media posts or public declarations. You don't need to prove your healing by flaunting it. All you have to do is live, quietly, confidently, in a way that has absolutely nothing to do with them. And that will haunt them more than anything else ever could. You see, a narcissist spends their entire life playing mind games, twisting reality, bending people to their will. They manipulate, deceive, gaslight, and control. Not because they have to, but because they enjoy it. It's their sport, their entertainment, their way of convincing themselves they're more intelligent, more powerful, more in control than everyone else. They believe they're always one step ahead, always writing the script, always pulling the strings. But what happens when you flip the script? So what happens when you flip the script? What happens when you quietly begin to use their own tactics against them? At first, they won't notice. They'll assume nothing has changed, that they're still in control, still the master manipulator, still calling the shots. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things begin to shift. The cracks start to show. You start mirroring their behavior, subtly, strategically. When they try to guilt trip you, you remain unmoved, like stone. When they attempt to gaslight you, you act as if you don't even understand what they're saying. When they deliver a backhanded insult disguised as a joke, you smile or laugh as if you didn't even register the jab. And suddenly, they're the ones feeling unsettled. You see, narcissists are used to being the puppet master. They're used to pulling strings, controlling the emotional tone of every room they enter. They like being the one who decides when people feel joy, shame, fear, or doubt. But when you don't respond the way they expect, when you refuse to react, when you flip their own tactics back on them, it throws them into unfamiliar territory. They start to fumble. They tell a lie, expecting you to challenge it, and you don't. You act like it didn't even land. They try to provoke you, expecting anger, but you stay calm, almost eerily so. They push for validation, craving a response, and you give them nothing. Not coldness, not cruelty, just silence, neutrality. And that's when it happens. They begin to lose control, not just over you, but over themselves. Because the one thing a narcissist cannot stand is unpredictability. Their entire strategy depends on certainty. They thrive when they can anticipate your every move, every reaction. But when you break that pattern, when you inject unpredictability into their carefully designed game, the foundation begins to crack. And the more uncertain they feel, the more their mask slips, the more they unravel. But here's the most important part. You don't have to play this game with cruelty or malice. You don't need revenge. You don't need to become manipulative yourself. All you need to do is stop giving them what they expect. No drama, no emotion, no confirmation of their power. Because a narcissist's greatest weakness isn't confrontation, it's confusion. It's not anger. It's not revenge. It's the moment they're left standing there, unsure, unbalanced, powerless in the face of their own tactics. That's when they realize it's over. Thank you for watching. I hope this message brought you clarity and strength. Wishing you peace, healing, and power moving forward. And don't forget to subscribe to Mindset Daily for more content like this. Stay healthy, stay happy, and keep choosing your peace.